Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. From the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are blessed and gathered here for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly brings us back to His beautiful home to remember Him is truly from His immense bounties and blessings. And so we should always be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity, because subhanAllah, so many, the reality is, are deprived of this ni'mah. So it is an opportunity for us that when we come here, to not take that for granted and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His rahmah and mercy, that whatever we take in at the masjid, any classes, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to be able to implement that in our lives and truly be able to give its right, to give its haqq and qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this. And subhanAllah, I highlight that word because the fact, qadr in itself, because of the fact that inshallah that will be the new name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will be covering. But before we go into those names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I do want us to reflect on Asma'ul Husna, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you all know, this series is called A Beautiful Life. And I always start off with this because of the fact that when we look at what a beautiful life is, subhanAllah, we envision life a certain way with our spouse, a certain way with our family, a certain way with our kids, our siblings, our parents. And when it doesn't go according to the way we envision it, we do feel a sense of like, wait, why is it not happening in that manner? Like, I planned, I spent time, I spent energy, I spent money, in creating that type of environment, but yet for some reason, it's not going according to the way I want. And that's something that we have to really reflect on, that when we say a beautiful life, it's not about how the way we want it. It's about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live in this dunya and in a manner that is most pleasing to Him. And so when we follow the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live our lives, and it's not just only that, okay, according to Islam, it's deeper than that. It's about your mindset. What kind of mindset are you living with? What thought process do you have? When you're experiencing those struggles, where is it that your mind goes to? Is it more into the negative aspect of it? Or is it that, no, this is my decree, I accept it, and this, inshallah, is how I'm going to move forward. And that's when you start to see the ripple effect of a beautiful life. So with this in mind, inshallah, we have 3 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we're going to be covering for a while. As we know, the pattern is that we take one name of Allah and we go into detail for a few weeks, right? Like probably 6, 7, 8 sessions. And it's because it really allows us to think about that particular name and really go into depth of like, how can I start changing my own thought process with this particular name in mind? And now we have 3 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allahu A'lam how long it's going to take. But again, I don't want to put a number to it. I want us to go ahead and take our time on these names and give it its haqq, give its miqdar, the value and its importance to it. So we're not going to rush through these names of Allah. But I want us to, inshallah, as we go through each one and look at the difference of what does Al-Qadir mean? What does Al-Qadir mean? And what does Al-Muqtadir mean? Each name of Allah, you'll see over here, has the same originated form, right? The origin form, the root form, which is Qadr, right? Qaf, Dal, Ra. And subhanAllah, we know that Ramadan is coming in we have about 2.5 weeks. And the fact that in Ramadan, we highlight the last 10 nights specifically, knowing that there is Laylatul Qadr, knowing that there is a night of decree. And we don't know which night it could be, right? We know that it's one of the odd nights. We recite Surah Al-Qadr. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. But the reality is that it's not just limited to Ramadan. So I thought that, for the past few weeks, we've been talking about Allah's name, Ar-Rabb, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nurtures us and gives us that tarbiyah in every situation that we're dealing with. And inshallah, we're now going to go into our qadr, our decree. So the first aspect that I want us to look at, which is going into the definition. The definition, which we know, each one has its own, remember, each name has its own significance to it. So even though, like, say, for example, if you look at Al-Qadir and you look at Al-Qadir, it's very, very similar, right? But with Al-Qadir, it's Qaf and has an Alif, and Al-Qadir, which has Qaf, Dal, and then a Ya. So that Alif in the first and the Ya in the second, both of them also have their own differences in terms of what is Al-Qadir signifying and what is Al-Qadir signifying. But first we're going to take the general meaning of it. So all three names generally, it means that the power and ability to do something. So for all three names, now imagine, three names of Allah signify that Allah has the power and ability to do something. So it's not just one name of Allah. The fact that there are three names of Allah that signify that, what does that mean? It means that it carries its own weight. It has its own importance to it. So we can't devalue it. We can't just say, oh yeah, but you know what? I guess that's the qadr of Allah, and just downplay it. You have to keep that at the top. The fact that Allah has the power and ability to do something, that's not something that just is like brush it off type of situation, or just mention it in like a random gathering, or just saying it like that. No, you have to truly say it with conviction that at the end of the day, Allah has the power and ability to do something. So that's the first. The second is that Allah has the power and ability to do what? Plan, right, and know. So one is action, right? That Allah has the power and ability to do something. And keep power and ability in mind for both, right? When we say power, we're talking about, for example, the fact that Allah has that, no one else has that ability, right? And of course, when we're talking about the ability, we mean that, okay, no one can ever go into that type of, in that area to begin with, even if they tried. So power and ability to do something, and then power and ability to plan. So at the end of the day, when we plan, keep in mind, you should plan. You should have a layout. You should have what your goals are, what you want, where you perceive yourself in a year, where you would like to go in 5 years, what you want to do later on in life. You should have that plan, right? But don't be fixated on that. Don't think that, okay, this is how it needs to be, and if it's not, then that's it. SubhanAllah, like I shared earlier, that there was a family event of mine that happened yesterday, right? And so just like in any event that takes place, you plan a certain way. You're like, okay, this is the logistic, this is the document, this is what's listed out. But naturally, there will be things that are completely out of your control, right? Think about, honestly, let's reflect a little bit. This winter freeze. How many things did we plan? I can tell you for a fact that last week, even when we were discussing about it, like obviously it was the talk of the town that everyone prepare for this winter freeze, but we did not anticipate the level where we were at home for so many days. I would look at my children and be like, when are you going to school? And that's just an example, subhanAllah. But Allah has the power to, and this is where I had to remind myself, but this is the qadr of Allah. Weather and what takes place in the weather is, do I have the power? Does the weatherman have the power? He forecasts it, but there's nothing that we can do. we were expecting that, okay, yeah, try and stock up, prepare yourself for generators, make sure your battery pack is, we were preparing, but there's only so much level of preparation that you could do. And then think about, subhanAllah, it's a lesson for us. Think about that despite all the things that we had at home during this freeze, we all still were itching to get out. I remember going out just for a little bit on last Wednesday, and everyone was like, it was a struggle driving the car, walking from place to place, but people just needed to get out. They were done. So this is a reminder of us not being in control of something as small or big as the weather. So power, Allah has the definition, the first one being that He has the ability to do something, action. The second one being ability to plan, write, because it's all written down. We know we say something called maktub meaning that it's written down, and the fact that He knows. So when some of these names that you will see in the Quran, and we'll inshallah be discussing it as well, it's the fact that Allah knows in an Arabic. What's the name of Allah? That He is the all-knowing? Al-Alim. He has the ilm. He is aware. So the fact that Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir is also linked with Al-Alim, it's very important to bring those names together. Because if I say that, oh, Allah knows, no, it's not that only Allah knows everything. It's the fact that He has the power because of how knowledgeable Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. It has an impact in how He plans and what He writes for us. And keep this in mind, inshallah, as we're making dua on the nights of Laylatul Qadr, as we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that forgiveness. So I want us to, these are two definitions specifically, that when we say the Qadr, we're talking about power and ability to do something, power and ability to plan, write, and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Which is why, subhanAllah, when we talk about the 6 pillars of Iman, 6 pillars of our faith is deeply rooted in us. It's in our hearts. We know 5 of Islam are all action-based. If you look at our 5 pillars of Islam, Salah is action, Siyam is action, Zakah is action, Hajj is action. And even when we say our Shahada, we're talking about saying the action of Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. But when we talk about the 6 pillars of Iman, and we're going into specifically the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have the belief in Allah, Iman billah, wa malaika, wa kutubihi, right? So you're talking about, okay, I believe in Allah, I believe in the angels, I believe in the messengers. What is the last pillar of Iman? Iman bil qadr. Iman bil qadr, which we say is khair or shar. But at the same time, even when we think of, okay, this is the qadr that is shar, there are ways to go about that as well. So now, and subhanAllah, you'll notice that a few of the concepts that we will discuss, inshallah, we've discussed this before in the name of Allah, Ar-Rabb. But it's because all the names of Allah are attached to each other, subhanAllah. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names, 99 names, which is in itself way over something that we would ever, like imagine an object had 99 names to that object. If a plant like this had 99 names to it, we would never be able, like there's no way that we would understand each and every one. Like, you know what, no, let's keep it simple and just have one. But the fact that Allah has 99, it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to know that no, there is significance in your lives knowing these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and ability, I want you to remember that this is my pillar of Iman that I'm dealing with. This is something that, not that, oh, your Iman is shaky because of the fact that you are not convinced of the qadr of Allah. What it means is that, okay, I need to work on it now. I need to improve on it. So now, when we go into the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir, all three names of Allah, like we said, the overarching is power and ability. He is able to do all things. Now, even though we're going to take each name, but I want us to just really remember that, and just kind of like look into, on the day of Arafah, we know how important the day of Arafah is. There is this dua, we can make any dua, right, on the day of Arafah, because everyone the Hajis that are gone, they're also making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But those that are not going for Hajj, they also, what are we doing? We fast. What else are we doing? We make dua. But what is advised to us? That this is the best dua that you can make on the day of Arafah. Anyone know? La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamd yuhyi wa yumit wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. This dua, and this is actually a dua that the scholars and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ has, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to recite on the day of Arafah. You can make any dua, but this is the best dua, La ilaha illallah. Because what are you doing? You are you're making dua to Allah. It's a type of dua that you're saying, La ilaha illallah, wahdahu. There is no God. There is no one that has the right to be worshipped except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wahdahu la sharika lah, without a single partner. Lahul mulku, and to him belongs all that exists. Lahul mulku, that everything that exists in this dunya, it belongs to Allah. It does not belong to us. Lahul mulku wa lahul hamd, and all praises is due to Allah. وَلَهُ الْحَمْدُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And He is powerful over all things. So the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has over everything that happens is, at the end of the day, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That power is not anyone else's control. All right. Now we're going to go into, we talked about the general meaning of all three names. We're now going to go into specifically in the deen, where Allah is the most powerful and able. It means that He Himself does not need anyone to give Him power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need anyone. I want us to think about ourselves, right? Think about when you, say for example, you're training for something, right? If you go to the gym, for example, you can't start off with those heavy weights, for example, right? You can't go ahead and do a certain number of sets and reps and think that, okay, automatically everything's like, I'm going to get stronger. What is needed to be done? It's a step-by-step process, right? Now, whose help do we usually get? First of all, you want to have, usually you'll either have a trainer or you'll have some sort of support system. You know that if you were to do something and keep it only towards you, you would be discouraged. You would be like, you know what, maybe some days I'll do it, some days I won't. You need to have someone that will keep you accountable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need anyone to keep Him accountable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need anyone to give Him that power. But we do. There are moments where we feel motivated, we feel like we have that push and drive, and there's some moments where we feel like, you know what, I do not want to get out of the house. I need if I feel so low, I feel so sad that I need people around me to push me. But that's because that's our nature. We need people around us. But Allah does not need anyone. So knowing the fact, these three names also includes the fact that He has the ability, but also He does not need anyone to give Him that power, goes into the concept of He is self-sufficient. We're not self-sufficient. And it's important to constantly keep this in your minds as you go through the different situations that take place. I'm not self-sufficient. Yes, we do have to remind ourselves that, okay, I shouldn't be relying on others, right, for every small thing, but I also know I can't do it alone. I don't have the power in me. I need whose help? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. Only He can help me get through the situation. The reality is that when we start to rely on other people, we start to rely on our friends, we start to rely on our family members, our siblings, our parents, we start to rely on our children, we start relying on our spouse, we start relying on our classmates, our colleagues. What is going to happen if you rely on them in a manner that where you're like, okay, I really, really need your help? What ends up happening? Disappointed. Disappointment. And that's for every relationship. It's not just like, oh, this is one type of relationship. I was expecting something out of you, and you didn't do it, you didn't follow through, and I'm disappointed. It's for every relationship. Expectation, period, equals to disappointment. Now, is that a negative thing? It's just it's just what happens. It's the nizam, the system that Allah created. You have expectations towards someone, be prepared to be disappointed. And why? Why is that the nizam? Why is that the system that Allah created? Why? So that we turn to Him. We redirect ourselves towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, wait a second, before you rely on this person to help you and support you, pause. Pause and turn to me first. That is what La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika is all about. I'm not associating anyone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not going to create any partners. Partners is not just, and we emphasize this a lot, partners is not just, oh, I'm not worshiping an idol though. I'm not worshiping a statue. It's not about that. It's about even when you're dealing with others, are you relying on them heavily? Now, does that mean that you don't rely on them at all? Like, oh, wait, no, I don't trust you, so I'm going to figure it out myself. No. Allah created that support system as well, but just before you go to them and ask them for something, you turn to Allah. Ya Allah, make the situation easy for me. Ya Allah, when I'm about to go ahead and speak to my spouse, or when I'm about to go ahead and speak to my parents, Ya Allah, open their hearts and understanding of where I'm coming from. And if I am saying anything wrong, then Ya Allah, give me that insight. That if I am saying something that actually does not make sense, or maybe I have that lack of knowledge, oh Allah, show me and guide me to the correct way. So that is what you've now done, which is relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is what the qadr of Allah is. When we say that Allah is al-qadir and He has that power, it means that He has complete power in every single place at every single time. Every single second He has that power. You do not. Now, when we look at, and this is inshallah what we're going to go into specifically. There's an ayah in the Quran, Surah Al-Ahqaf. And even though you see this specific ayah, Surah Ahqaf, ayah number 33, I'm going to go, inshallah, we're going to go to Quran.com and go into it a little bit more, because though this ayah specifically speaks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He's capable of all things. So in Surah Al-Ahqaf, ayah number 33, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do they not realize that Allah, who created the heavens and the earth and did not tire in creating them, is able to give life to the dead? Yes, indeed, He is certainly most capable of everything. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّ اللَّهَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَمْ يَعْيَ بِخَلْقِهِنَّ بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى بلى إنه على كل شيء قدير. So there are two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are mentioned here. One is the fact that He is able to, قادر على أن يحيي, give that haya, give that life, that Allah is able to give life to the dead. And then He says, Bala, yes indeed, innahu ala kulli shayin qadir. He is certainly most capable of everything. Okay, so first let's reflect on this ayah, and then we're going to take the ayah before and take the ayah after to go get some context. But I'm going to go ahead and open up the ayah. This is Surah Al-Ahqaf. Ahqaf, ayah number 33. All right, can everyone still see it? Yeah, okay. All right. First of all, let's reflect the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, along with Al-Qadir and Qadir, what is Allah mentioning over here? That He خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So it goes into creation. Creation, is it something that we can create? No. We do not have that power and control to create anything, whether it be plans, whether it be, just different situations. We don't have that power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth and did not tire in creating them. SubhanAllah. I want us to actually reflect because, I know, alhamdulillah, we have also some expecting mothers here in this crowd. And I know in general, we have different sisters who are going through different phases in life, right? Some are now in their postgraduate, some are right now working professionals, some are thinking of getting married, some are married, right? Some are, inshallah, creating families here. So there are various phases, but I want us to specifically, there's one example that came into my mind when I thought of this, that Allah did not tire in creating them. I want us to think, and there's actually two examples now that I can think of. One, I'll bring in if, say for example, a new mother. They say that the first trimester is the worst. You're tired. You're exhausted. You're just like, you know what? I cannot do that. It's what? What are we doing? We're like, well, we're creating humans inside. That's why our body is working hard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we did not tire in creating them. I want you to think of another example. Say you're working on a project. When you work on a project, can you work on something overnight? Like a project that you're working on, if you do something overnight, first of all, you're not going to be doing it, like it's not going to be done well. It's not going to be done with ihsan. If you envision something, right? You have like a plan. Think about those that are into arts, right? Paintings. Ask any painter, any artist, How long is the process? They will say usually it takes a while or it takes hours into planning. And the next one, do you not get tired? What do they say? Yeah, I'm like right now just struggling, or right now I just am surviving on coffee or tea in order to get this project done. But because at the end of the day, they're creating something. Now think about that is our power, or shall we say lack of power that we have. There's only so many all-nighters that one can pull off. And after that, what happens to your brain functionality? Then you start getting delirious, you start to get agitated. It's because it's not normal for us. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Ayatul Kursi that He does not need any sleep, when we say Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm, that is the power of Allah. He does not need sleep. We need sleep. When we lack in sleep we take 2 hours a day, 3 hours at night, we cannot function properly. That's our true power. But the power of Allah is He will always be awake. He will never take those naps. He will never slumber. So now over here, Allah is saying that I did not tire in creating the entire heavens and this earth, but never for a moment did I become tired in creating that. That tells you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's number one, dedication. Number two, that is His qudra. That's His power. And now, what else is He saying? And in addition to the fact that I created all of this, I am able to do now what? Give life to the dead. So there's one attribute where we can perhaps be like, well, yeah, I create things too technically, right? I create paintings. I'm creating a life. I create when I'm in the kitchen and cooking food. Those are things that you do. But yet, you cannot be in that same level as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses another example, which we absolutely cannot do no matter how hard we even tried, which is giving life to the dead. So one thing is possible, but actually it's not. The other one is absolutely impossible. And both descriptions are showing Allah has the power to do both of them, and we do not. Giving life to the dead. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes bala. Bala in Arabic, that when bala is used, it doesn't only just mean yes, like just, oh yes, normally. Yes meaning, when we say like, for example, na'am, right? Like normal na'am. Bala means like for sure, absolutely. There is not a single shred of doubt in it. Bala innahu. When we use the word inna, it means yes. So like technically Allah is emphasizing bala and innahu. He's using the emphasis twice. And then uses innahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Just from this one single ayah, do you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, the flow of this ayah, and then how many times He's emphasized, it's not that long of an ayah, but so much meaning and depth is in this one ayah. That how can we, and this is a question that we ask ourselves now, that when I'm in a situation where it's popped up now, and it's truly out of my control, yet I feel like I'm drowning, yet I feel like I need everyone to be on the same page as I am. Is this not an opportunity for us to ask ourselves, wait a second, Why am I getting so worried though? Why am I fixated on this? Bala innahu ala kulli shayin qadir. That Allah is the one that is in the full control and full power though. There's only so much that I can do, and I need to learn to let go. Let go completely. SubhanAllah. Right? The ayah before that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah number 32 of Surah Al-Ahqaf, again, now we're going to go into a little bit of context, that whoever does not respond to the caller of Allah will have no escape on earth, nor will they have any protectors against him. It is they who are clearly astray. وَمَن لَا يُجِبْ دَاعِيَ اللَّهِ. So what that means is, think about da'wah. That when Allah, and this goes into that whoever does not respond to the caller of Allah, when we're talking about da'i Allah, we're talking about, think of like any study circle, any gatherings where you're learning about Islam. If you don't respond that with, okay, let me reflect, let me think about it, let me see how I can change myself, being introspective. Allah is saying that the reality is that you will have no escape on earth. There will be no one that can protect you against Allah. What does that mean? It means that when you are now exposed to knowledge, don't just be writing it down and not taking that time out to reflect. SubhanAllah, again, we have so much exposure to knowledge nowadays. It's literally easily accessible. But yet, for some times, like, we just keep on taking it and unable to actually process it, unable to actually reflect on it. That is the key thing, that Allah is literally saying that the response that Allah is looking for is not like, okay, you are writing and you are constantly attending. That's not you responding to the call of Allah. Response is that you are reflecting on how you are behaving, reflecting on how you are speaking. Because otherwise, Allah is reminding us that if you do not, whoever does not, in this dunya, there is no escape. What do we mean by no escape? We're talking about that in this dunya, you will constantly be running, constantly be trying to fulfill some sort of void, constantly trying to run towards people, because that's going to be your escape. Because think about it, the escape that you're looking for, because you feel this dissatisfaction, you will not be able to find it unless you flee to Allah. So now, this ayah is before, and then let's go into the ayah after, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and He talks about, and on the day the disbelievers will be exposed to the fire, they will be asked, is this hereafter not the truth? وَيَوْمَ يُعْرَضُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا عَلَى النَّارِ أَلَيْسَ هَذَا بِالْحَقِّ. What are they going to say? Absolutely, by our Lord. It will be said, then taste the punishment for your disbelief. Yes, it is. This ayah in itself is specifically talking about the disbelievers. But this is a reminder for us, because again, take every ayah and be like, okay, wait, how do I apply this ayah now? We know the truth. This ayah is talking about the disbelievers that will be shown the fire, and they will be asked, is this don't you think the hereafter is not the truth? Are you not aware? And what are they going to say? They're not going to be like, no, we still don't believe it, because they didn't believe in this dunya. But instead they're going to say, absolutely. Qalu, what did I say? Bala. Qalu bala. And then what's the next name that they use? Qalu bala wa rabbina. So they have literally acknowledged that Allah is the Rabb, even though these are disbelievers, by the way. So if they acknowledged Allah is the Rabb on the day of judgment, then what about us? When Allah has guided us to Islam, how can we not acknowledge Allah in this dunya? And so they're saying, absolutely, by our Lord. And then Allah will say, then taste the punishment of your disbelief. So that's why, again, let's take this ayah and now ask ourselves, on the last 10 nights, what do we do when what is the dua that we should be making on the last 10 nights? And we're going to, inshallah, go into this into a little bit more detail. But I'm just giving you like more of like quick previews. Last 10 nights, what dua should we be making the most? Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. You're asking Allah, oh Allah, you are al-afu. Pardon me. We need that pardoning, right? So that is where we are asking Allah for that pardon, because we don't want to taste this punishment of disbelief. And we know we do so many things that we need Allah's afu, not just ghafur. We need His afu, where He pardons us and removes it completely. So inshallah, reflecting on Surah Al-Ahqaf, ayah number 33, as a reminder for all of us, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this ayah, أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّ اللَّهَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَمْ يَعْيَ خَلْقِهِنَّ بِقَادِرٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى بَلَا إِنَّهُ عَلَىٰ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Think about Allah's ability and power to do, to plan, to write, right? And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has every ability. So with that, inshallah, we're going to go ahead and stop here. Inshallah, we're going to go into some reflections. If anyone has any, I know I definitely do, but we are going to go offline. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be able to implement these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives and truly understand the power and ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, that we can never even match that. And so it's a reminder that we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are, Ya Allah, we are truly in need of you. And we ask Allah to show us that and to make us from those that are always in need of Allah. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakallahu khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.